25 miles northeast of Cardiff is the town of Caer-went, established by the Romans when it was known as Venta Silurum, market town of the Silures. The town has given its name to the county, Gwent, in which it lies. The town served as the urban base for inhabitants of the conquered and Romanized tribe, the Silures. The town has the best preserved Roman walls in Britain, still standing up to 17 foot in places. In the 2nd century AD, Caerwent had a population of about 3,000 people. Archaeological excavations undertaken at the turn of the 20th century revealed evidence of a forum, basilica, public baths, a temple, and townhouses, each with a central heating system. This is evidence of a highly sophisticated society. But it didn't happen overnight. Roman domination took some time. Roman forces first came to Britain under the first Roman emperor, Julius Caesar, in 55 and 54 BC, during his military efforts to subjugate the western part of Europe, then known as Gaul. Caesar's book, Commentaries on the Gallic War, describes the religious culture of the inhabitants of Britain and Gaul, and the role of the Druid priesthood. He wrote,
"The most civilized of all these nations are those who inhabit Kent, which is entirely a maritime district, nor do they differ much from the Gallic customs. Most of the inland inhabitants do not cultivate grains, but live on milk and flesh, and are clad with skins. All the Britons, indeed, dye themselves with a woad, which occasions a bluish colour, and thereby have a more terrible appearance in fight. They wear their hair long, and have every part of their body shaved, except their head and upper lip. 10, and even 12, have wives common to them, and particularly brothers among brothers, and parents among their children. But if there be any issue by these wives, they are reputed to be the children of those by whom, respectively, each was first espoused when a virgin. The Druids are engaged in things sacred, conduct the public and the private sacrifices, and interpret all matters of religion. To these a large number of the young men resort for the purpose of instruction, and the Druids are in great honour among them, for they determine respecting almost all controversies, public and private, and if any crime has been perpetrated, if murder has been committed, if there be any dispute about an inheritance, if any about boundaries, these same persons decide it. They decree rewards and punishments. If anyone, either in a private or public capacity, has not submitted to their decision, they excommunicate him from the sacrifices. This among them is the heaviest punishment. Those who have been thus excommunicated are considered to be criminal and immoral. All shun them, and avoid their company and conversation, for fear that they will receive some evil from their contact. Nor is justice administered to them when seeking it, nor is any dignity bestowed on them. The Druidic order is supposed to have been created in Britain, and to have been brought over from it into Gaul. And now those who desire to gain a more accurate knowledge of that system generally proceed thither for the purpose of studying it. All the Gauls are extremely devoted to superstitious rituals, and on that account they who are troubled with unusually severe diseases, and they who are engaged in battles and dangers, either sacrifice men as victims, or vow that they will sacrifice them, and employ the Druids as the performers of those sacrifices, because they think that unless the life of a man be offered for the life of a man, the mind of the immortal gods cannot be rendered propitious, and they have sacrifices of that kind ordained for national purposes. They consider that the sacrifice of peoples guilty of theft, or in robbery, or any other offense, is more acceptable to the immortal gods. But when a supply of such people is wanting, they have the right to even sacrifice the innocent.
At the time, Britain was organised into over 20, sometimes warring tribes. Roman forces would not set foot in Britain again until the reign of Emperor Claudius in 43 AD. Claudius sent 4 legions to Britain, including the Second Augusta Legion, led by the future Emperor Vespasian. In 1984, the mummified body of a young man was found in a peat bog in Cheshire, England. Initially named Pete Marsh by the press, the body was eventually christened the Lindow Man. He had manicured fingernails and finely trimmed hair and beard. There was no evidence of him having engaged in any manual work. He was a man of high social status. At his death, a rope had been tightened around his neck and then his throat cut, a practice that would have resulted in the gushing of a fountain of blood. His head had been violently smashed in, and in his gut were pollen grains from mistletoe. It is likely that the murder occurred in the 1st century AD. The body bore the hallmarks of a ritual sacrifice. Professor Miranda Aldhouse-Green, an archaeologist at Cardiff University in Wales, suggested that the young man may have been sacrificed to persuade the Celtic gods to halt the Roman advance. Roman fortresses were established throughout the country, but they were more in Silurian territory than any other part of Britain, most famously at Caerwent, one of just 3 permanent legionary fortresses in Britain. Caerwent was home to the 2nd Augusta Legion. Eventually, in 75 AD, the Silures were subdued. The Romans preferred not to rule directly, but to hand authority to trusted local leaders, the civitas. Those local leaders would have lived in Caerwent. There are a number of significant finds during the early 20th century excavation, including a statue base with a dedication dated to 152 AD, and a Roman altar with an inscription that reads, God Mars Ocelus, alias Augustinus Optio, paid his vow. An optio was a junior officer appointed by a centurion. It is a reasonable assumption to make that alias Augustinus had been based at the nearby Roman fort of Caerleon and had settled in Caerwent on retirement. He arranged for the altar to be constructed thanking the god Mars Ocelus. Mars is the Roman god of war. Little is known about the god Ocelus, but he was presumably a local god. Our gods represent that which we value. It is not unreasonable to suggest that those associated with the Roman imperial forces valued war. It is not unreasonable to suggest that after conquest they also valued peace, a peace that could be accomplished by open communication and the healing of feelings of resentment. Just a few years prior to the conquest of the Silures, Rome was engaged in another war with the Jews. The account of the unfolding of this war is documented in a book by Jewish historian Josephus, and the book gives a detailed description of the social forces at work at the time. The war largely ended in 70 AD with the siege of Jerusalem and the destruction of the Second Temple. At about that time, the Gospel of Mark was written. The name Mark itself is associated with the god of war. Mark's Gospel is perhaps the single most influential book in the history of Western civilization. During the excavation of one of the Caerwent townhouses, a remarkable discovery was made. A large urn was buried into the floor of one of the rooms. Found within the urn were a pewter bowl and plate, 3 red ceramic bowls, and fragments of cloth. It is thought that the findings date from the 4th century. At the time, it was suggested that the utensils may have been used in an agape, a communal meal observed by early Christians. 45 years later, in 1961, the objects were looked at again. It was discovered that etched into the bottom of the pewter bowl was the Chi-Rho symbol, the early Christian symbol for Christ. The symbol is made from the superimposition of the first 2 letters of the Greek word Christos. This may be the earliest evidence of Christianity in Wales, and Christianity was embraced by the Celtic Britons. Every place name in Wales, prefixed with a clan, is evidence of a Christian settlement in former times. But Romano-British culture was under threat. When Magnus Maximus left Britain in 383, he took with him an army of soldiers. The remaining soldiers were taken by Constantine III in 407 AD. Britain was no longer protected by imperial forces. It was vulnerable to attacks from the Picts in the north, the Angles and Saxons in the east, and the Irish in the west. One young British man who was captured by Irish slave raiders would become St. Patrick. In his 5th century Confessions, he wrote,
"My name is Patrick. I am a sinner, a simple country person, and the least of all believers. I am looked down upon by many. My father was Calpurnius. He was a deacon. His father was Potitus, a priest who lived at Banaven Tiburnii. His home was near there, and that is where I was taken prisoner. I was about 16 at the time. At that time, I did not know the true God. I was taken into captivity in Ireland, along with thousands of others. We deserved this because we had gone away from God and did not keep his commandments. We would not listen to our priests who advised us about how we could be saved. The Lord brought his strong anger upon us and scattered us among many nations, even to the ends of the earth. It was among foreigners that it was seen how little I was. It was there that the Lord opened up my awareness of my lack of faith. Even though it came about late, I recognized my failings. So I turned with all my heart to the Lord my God, and he looked down on my loneliness and had mercy on my youthful ignorance. He guarded me before I knew him, and before I came to wisdom and could distinguish between good and evil. He protected me and consoled me as a father does for his son. That is why I cannot be silent, nor would it be good to do so, about such great blessings and such a gift that the Lord so kindly bestowed in the land of my captivity. This is how we can repay such blessings, when our lives change and we come to know God, to praise and bear witness to his great wonders before every nation under heaven. This is because there is no other God, nor will there ever be, nor was there ever, except God the Father. He is the one who is not begotten, the one without a beginning, the one from whom all beginnings come, the one who holds all things in being. This is our teaching. And his Son, Jesus Christ, whom we testify has always been, since the beginning of this age, with the Father in a spiritual way. He was begotten in an indescribable way before every beginning. Everything we can see and everything beyond our sight was made through him. He became a human being and, having overcome death, was welcomed to the heavens to the Father. The Father gave him all power over every being, both heavenly and earthly, and beneath the earth. Let every tongue confess that Jesus Christ, in whom we believe, and whom we await to come back to us in the near future, is Lord and God. He is judge of the living and of the dead. He rewards every person according to their deeds. He has generously poured on us the Holy Spirit, the gift and promise of immortality, who makes believers and those who listen to be children of God and co-heirs with Christ. This is the one we acknowledge and adore, one God in a trinity of the sacred name.
The prayer, St. Patrick's Breastplate, the Lorica, is attributed to St. Patrick, but it cannot be traced back earlier than the 8th century. It may have been composed earlier, but there is no way of directly linking the prayer to the saint. The work is a prayer for protection. A lorica is the defensive breastplate worn by Roman soldiers, although Roman forces never reached Ireland.
For my shield this day I call a mighty power, the Holy Trinity, affirming threeness, confessing oneness, in the making of all through love. For my shield this day I call Christ's power in his coming and in his baptizing, Christ's power in his dying on the cross, his arising from the tomb, his ascending, Christ's power in his coming for judgment and ending. For my shield this day I call strong power of the seraphim, with angels obeying and archangels attending, in the glorious company of the holy and risen ones, in the prayers of the fathers, in visions prophetic and commands apostolic, in annals of witness, in virginal innocence, in the deeds of steadfast men. For my shield this day I call heaven's might, sun's brightness, moon's whiteness, fire's glory, lightning's swiftness, wind's wildness, ocean's depth, earth's solidity, rock's immobility. This day I call to me God's strength to direct me, God's power to sustain me, God's wisdom to guide me, God's vision to light me, God's ear to my hearing, God's word to my speaking, God's hand to uphold me, God's pathway before me, God's shield to protect me, God's legions to save me, from snares of the demons, from evil enticements, from failings of nature, from one man or many, but seek to destroy me, and near or afar. Around me I gather these forces to save my soul and my body from dark powers that assail me, against false prophesyings, against pagan devisings, against heretical lying and false gods all around me, against spells cast by women, by blacksmiths, by druids, against knowledge unlawful that injures the body, that injures the spirit. Be Christ this day my strong protector, against poison and burning, against drowning and wounding, through reward wide and plenty. Christ beside me, Christ before me, Christ behind me, Christ within me, Christ beneath me, Christ above me, Christ to right of me, Christ to left of me, Christ in my lying, my sitting, my rising, Christ in heart of all who know me, Christ on tongue of all who meet me, Christ in eye of all who see me, Christ in ear of all who hear me. For my shield this day I call a mighty power, the Holy Trinity, affirming threeness, confessing oneness in the making of all, through love. For to the Lord belongs salvation, and to the Lord belongs salvation, and to Christ belongs salvation. May your salvation, Lord, be with us always.
The Trinity represents the wool soul, which is superior to the tribal identity. It is by making the world soul sacred that we become more receptive to the experiences of others. But the world soul requires a social acceptance of the importance of an objective truth and a social acceptance of the importance of a common understanding of each other's traditions. In 2023, Sketty Mosque and Community Centre was opened. The building is a refurbished Christian church. It was awarded a grant of £250,000 from the Welsh Government. On 22nd of December 2024, Sketty Mosque held a free event for all children between the ages of 5 and 16. The event was called The Story of the Prophet Isha, which is Jesus of Nazareth. Traditionally, Christians have understood that Jesus is not a prophet, he is the Son of God, in line with the Nicene Creed. This is not something that is ever taught in mosques. Throughout the country, in every mosque and in every Muslim community, our Christian heritage is being continuously misrepresented. Not only that, Muslims are fed a diet of Islamist propaganda. The Islamic Human Rights Commission is a UK-registered charity which spends a lot of time highlighting Islamophobia in the UK. They made the news in 2015 when they conferred the International Islamophobe of the Year award to the French satirical magazine Charlie Hebdo, a few months after the magazine's staff had been brutally murdered by Islamic terrorists for drawing unflattering images of Muhammad.
Oh, Charlie Hebdo. Charlie Hebdo, a magazine that allegedly believes there should be no censorship in this world and that nothing is above caricature, satire or ridicule. So, no one from Charlie Hebdo could make it. But there is a tribute to Charlie Hebdo.
Come see Genex's impact. Charlie Hebdo echo to the one. We were not pleased when you were Yet when you had time, you were thrilled. Oh, Charlie, Charlie, je ne suis pas. Charlie, Charlie, je ne suis pas. Oh, Charlie, Charlie, je ne suis pas. Charlie, Charlie, réponds-moi. Na 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 na. Charlie, Charlie, je ne suis pas. So what did you gain by causing us pain? You were murdered by people that don't train. Some respect for humanity as the true meaning of liberty. Oh, Charlie, Charlie, je ne suis pas. Na 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 na. Charlie, Charlie, je ne suis pas. Oh, Charlie, Charlie, je ne suis pas. Na 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 na. Charlie, Charlie, je ne suis pas.
Charlie Hebdo, ladies and gentlemen. Charlie Hebdo, ladies and gentlemen, thank you.
They highlight the oppression of Muslims worldwide, but campaign domestically as well. After the Southport riots in the summer of 2024, they wrote a letter to Home Secretary Yvette Cooper, alleging that the murder of 3 young girls had been weaponized by the far right, enabled by Zionist financiers. In October 2024, they wrote again to Yvette Cooper, urging that Hamas and Hezbollah be proscribed in light of the biggest genocide of our lifetime in Gaza. In January 2024, the organisation Genocide Watch reported on the situation in Nigeria. They stated,
Since 2000, 62,000 Christians in Nigeria have been victims of genocide perpetrated by Islamist extremist groups Boko Haram, Islamic State West Africa Province, and organized Fulani jihadists. The International Committee on Nigeria calls this genocide the silent slaughter. 34,000 moderate Muslims have also been murdered by Islamist extremist groups since 2000.
Surprisingly, the Islamic Human Rights Commission have nothing to say about this. The only campaigning they are promoting in relation to Nigeria is in relation to human rights violations suffered by Sheikh Zakzaki and his followers. Sheikh Zakzaki aims to continue the jihad of Ben Fodio, the founder of the Sokoto Caliphate, whose regime of enslavement of non-Muslim war captives was key to its economic development. This culture of enslavement of non-Muslim war captives was brought to an end, partially with the help of Lord Aberdare, the first president of Cardiff University. On the homepage of the Sketty Mosque website is a button that links to a page where you can read the Quran. A search for the word Trinity brings up the following verses.
O people of the book, do not go to extremes regarding your faith. Say nothing about Allah except the truth. The Messiah, Jesus, son of Mary, was no more than a messenger of Allah, and the fulfillment of his word through Mary and the Spirit, created by command from him. So believe in Allah and his messengers, and do not say Trinity. Stop, for your own good. Allah is only one God. Glory be to him. He is far above having a son. To him belongs whatever is in the heavens and whatever is on the earth. And Allah is sufficient as a trustee of affairs. They do blaspheme who say Allah is one of 3 in a trinity, for there is no God except one Allah. If they desist not from their word, a blasphemy, verily a grievous penalty will befall the blasphemers among them. Those who say Allah is the Messiah, son of Mary, have certainly fallen into disbelief. The Messiah himself said, O children of Israel, worship Allah, my Lord and your Lord. Whoever associates others with Allah in worship will surely be forbidden paradise by Allah. Their home will be the fire, and the wrongdoers will have no helpers.
St. Patrick lived about 200 years before Muhammad was born, but the message from the Quran is clear. He is burning in hell. The Welsh government seemed pretty cool about this. As Mick Anthony says,
countries have had a diversity of values since time immemorial.
The Welsh government doesn't seem very interested in giving those from a different religious background any substantial education on the religious cultural heritage of Wales. It's not unreasonable to ask whether this is very sensible